Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to Sumi, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I apologize for the wind noise, but I'm driving. Dad was nice to let me use his car, which is my old car, to go and visit a relative that's recovering from a major illness, and it messed with his immune system and his nervous system. I'm in the States largely to help Dad with Mom, because my mom has actually been through a lot, medically speaking. She's been through 3 almost fatal illnesses and come out of each one. And so my dad has pretty much said that since God has given her extra time, he is going to really do all he can to make the most of that time that he has left with my mom. Now, I'm not saying that God changed his plan, but what I'm saying is that the mechanisms by which we observe people and by which we lose them was simply not slated, and they weren't destined to be the end of her at those times. Even when they manifested, death did not. And I thank Allah for that. My dad is thanking Allah for that and trying to be the best husband with the time that they both have left. I come in and I help as often as I possibly can. My brother goes in a lot, and my son, if he gets time, he'll go in and check on them. I'll say this though. I open this up because I'm going to tell you that I'm going to go live in a bit, probably in time between 5 to 7 Eastern time. I should go live. I don't want to be up long and late, but I'll try to go live, even if I'm only on for a short time, because I want to give y'all some updates, including about Simba, and updates from which you might be able to learn. But there's something that I'm going to point out to you all now that you have done better than anybody would have expected. And yet, you really seem to think you can't do it. And I look at you in amazement at how well you do exactly what you think you cannot do. You guys have actually done a pretty good job of implementing male chastity, and I've talked about this before. You've done a better job than expected. Many of you still think that you can't commit to doing this, and that's the next step. But you've been tricked out of believing that you even can. You can. The chastity that you are already practicing, the restraint you're already practicing, the abstinence that you're already practicing indefinitely, because you're not sure exactly when it's over, is something that you're doing well enough to go ahead and commit to doing later on, not in the form of celibacy, but in the form of simply temporary abstinence. You've already shown that you are very capable of going without. You act like you're not, but you've shown that you're actually very capable of going without. You've done a good job of going without. The women are shocked, and they're calling you 9AY because of it. And many of you were saying, well, I mean, if I can go without it, then there's really no reason to even approach women. And the women are upset about that. And they want you to give an account as for why it is that you're not approaching them. They want explanations. Why aren't you? And how dare you? And are you really even interested in women? And how could you turn down all of this? That's how many of them are behaving now, and how they're acting and how they're talking. So you guys are out here astounding them because of what they believe you cannot do. And here you are. And so what I'm telling you is that you're capable of all of the things you think that you're not capable of in the solution that I've already promoted for black people. There's one thing that some of you are afraid of still, and that is that you're afraid that you're going to make a commitment to the solution, and then someone's later going to come along and be able to prove to you that the solution means you sold black people out. That's one thing some of you still fear, even if you don't fear that you would fail if your chastity were tested. Many of you fear and feel that if your chastity were tested, you would fail that. Because right now you're not being approached. You can do without, but you're not being approached. However, you think that as soon as you commit to that test, or as soon as you commit to the path of chastity, that then it's going to be tested and you're going to fail. Well, if it's always tested every day nonstop, most adults would fail. You still would not prove yourselves inferior to most women, because many women are already failing that test, because even if they're saying no to most men, they're still complaining when they're not being approached. And that right then and there is a failure of their test of chastity. See, it's not chastity if you're saying no for the wrong reasons. And that's also a double standard that I want to go ahead and uphold while I'm at it. When you say no, that's chastity. That's the default assumption. When they say no, and you can prove it wrong, but the default assumption is if you say no and turn down some trim, that's chastity. If they say no and turn down some peen, the default assumption is that it is conceit and arrogance, that's all. It's just being hard to please. If they still want attention from men they don't have chastity. If they want attention from multiple men, they don't have chastity. Well, not if they want it, but if they seek it, I should say. If they go out and try to actually get it. If they just want the attention, but they say, well, it's wrong to seek it, so they don't do it, then they still made a moral decision despite what they wanted to do. That makes it even more moral. And I tip my hat to them. Okay, you want men's attention, but you refuse to seek it, because you know it's not fair to them or you. But to the ones who seek out men's attention, no. You sought it out. You ain't moral. You got a problem. Something wrong with your ass. I don't want to hear it. So you turning down peen does not make you chaste. Right off the bat. But there's one other thing, and some of you feel that, well, you still think that the solution involves selling out black folks. I already posted a link to a clip of Bilal of the Features answering somebody's question, can you be Muslim and pro-black? Which, at one point, in the late 80s and early 90s, many of us would assume was a dumb question. What do you mean? Don't you have to be pro-black to be a Muslim? Don't you have to call the white man a devil to be a Muslim? Many of us would have conflated those two. And now the question is, if you're Muslim, can you be pro-black? And Bilal treated that like the dumb question that it was, coming from the source from which that question came, and said, I would tell you that it is obligatory not to be pro-black because blackness is superior, but to be pro-black because anti-black racism is a real injustice. It's not a hypothetical one, it's a real living injustice, and it's everywhere, or almost everywhere. It's even in much of Africa. And Bilal was able to sit up and point to examples from the biography of the last prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to point to back up what he said. He wasn't just pulling it out of thin air because he black and he Muslim. No, he pulled it from the biography because he's educated and trained. He spent 9 years in either Mecca or Medina, I forgot which one, learning. That's why. I'm not telling you again that the solution is the solution because I accepted it years ago. I'm telling you that I accepted it because I saw a long time ago how it is the solution, why it is the solution. It's the reverse. And I gave it years for anybody who, if they were able to do so, to come along and prove to me that you're not allowed to be pro-black and for justice for black people if you're Muslim. I gave years for people to show me that if that was actually going to be something they could prove, and no one's been able to do it. People have wanted me to think that my opposition to racism was a form of racism, but that's not it. They couldn't convince me of that. All they convinced me was that they had that white supremacist brainwashing and didn't know they had it, and thought that Islam was compatible with their white supremacist brainwashing. That's all they convinced me of. And I understand some of you all's fear about that. But I can tell you that that fear is not well-founded. It doesn't have a real basis. Your fear may be justified if you really think that that's the case because you were really told that somebody's going to be able to come to you one day with a big old beard and curry on his breath and convince you that white supremacy is a part of their religion. Somebody may have really told you one day they're going to show up and you're going to have to accept it. But in reality, you can tell that it doesn't hold water. And even if a scholar has said something, if a classical scholar has said something that was anti-black and it's biased, then it's still fallible. And that classical scholar could be scrutinized. And the thing is that if the classical scholars to which people refer for other matters and other subjects can be scrutinized because they said something that was anti-black, that means that you would then be able to scrutinize those who have a problem with you if you make a decision in your life to protect yourselves and your progeny from anti-blackness. If some classical scholar long ago said that black women don't even need a hijab because they're just not beautiful, and I turn around and I tell my daughters, you don't need a husband that ain't egalitarian. You don't need a husband whose people are not egalitarian. And that's to protect you from the racism of, if not the husband, at least the in-laws. And what this means is no one has a right to tell me a mother cuss word thing about my decision, because that's designed to protect the daughters. But they thought they had a leg to stand on, even though they would not have dared stand against a classical scholar for saying something that's anti-black. Because you see, no prophet ever did that. That's not something anybody's ever actually been able to tie to revelation. No prophets pulled off a stunt like that. They didn't do it. You just had some people claiming to speak in their name or trying to extrapolate from the revelation and didn't know where their bias started and the revelation ended. Because when people have an anti-black bias, the devil whispers to them that this is a normal human instinct. That's all that is. But I want you to know you are capable. You've already shown you are capable of things you cannot do. You think you cannot do. You're capable of things you have decided you could not do. And you have accepted blame for things that were beyond your control. You've been doing this for so long that my light-skinned ass got to sit up and tell you it ain't your fault. Now, when I say that, I'm obviously not talking about things that actually are your fault. But I got to sit up and point to a lot of things for which you decided to take responsibility, and I got to tell you it ain't your fault. Because you've been so used to blaming yourself for stuff you don't control. And we're never allowed to control. You're super accountable. That I got to get up here and tell you when you're not guilty. If you are capable of doing so much more than what you thought you were, don't you think you're capable of comprehensively subscribing to, committing to, and practicing that which is a solution for our people? It's funny because you kind of remind me of a little kid, a young kid who can do a backflip because he practiced it for months and a few weeks, and he does backflips now. Not underwater. Does backflips, but then when he gets a cold and he has to take a medicine that he doesn't like the taste of, but he can't smell and taste it anyway because he got a cold, he can't do it. That's what you're like. You can do a backflip as a 7-year-old, but you can't bring yourself to take a medicine that you don't like, even though you can't taste or smell the medicine when you need it in the first place. You're just like that. That's what I wanted you to understand about yourself. Sometimes your first biggest handicap was not your fault. Somebody blindsided the race. But the second biggest handicap is that you've actually believed yourself incapable of things somebody else determined, instead of finding out your human limits for yourself. And the thing is, if you were really the horn dogs that many women of many races want to make you out to be, the oversexed horn dogs, if that really was the case, you would not be the second most sought after men on the planet. That's the truth of the matter. I hope that what I've said is a benefit. Thank you for listening, and as always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it in black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us again here on Jet Black Air, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.